Welcome to your Defensive Stopper 30-Day Challenge. In this challenge, you'll develop the tools to become a defensive stopper so that you can shut down players in the full court or half court. Specifically, you'll master the technique of taking charges. You'll enhance your ability to stop penetration, and you'll develop the 5 habits of every good defender. Let's see it. In all the years that I've been playing and coaching the game, I've never stepped into the gym and seen a player working on their defensive skills. But I'm going to give you today some really simple things that you can do to become a defensive stopper. And I have Kyle here with me, a multi-time PGC grad, and we're going to go through some very simple principles and habits that you can develop and add to your game so that you can be a lockdown defender. Kyle, we're going to go ahead and start with our first skill that you can develop, and it's the ability to take a charge. Most players are fearful of taking charges because they've never learned how to take charges properly. Rather than taking a 4-foot charge in which you just grin and bear it and take a licking, we're going to teach you how to take a 4-inch fall. You want to make every charge a 4-inch fall so that it's a relatively small distance that you're falling when you actually absorb the contact. So if I'm the offensive player and Kyle's the defensive player, in fact, we'll put you in a help side position, Kyle. As the penetration comes down the lane, the closer the ball or the closer the penetrator is to you, the lower you want to get. That's a key principle. The closer the ball is, the lower you get. So he's down, he's in an athletic stance, and as opposed to doing what most players do, which is stand up tall, which A, makes it difficult to take a charge, or it hurts, it can hurt when you take the charge, but it also makes it easier for a quick and clever offensive player to direction change and go around you and leave you looking like a pylon. When you're low and wide, you're ready to slide and move either direction with the penetration, but you're also ready to absorb the contact and have a light fall. So the closer I get to Kyle, the lower he gets, until finally, by the time we're ready to make contact, instead of it being chest to chest, he's down low and he's within a few inches of his 2 cheeks hitting the ground. Then he's going to keep out his forearm. This is going to be his protector. This is going to be his bumper, just like a car. This is his fender to protect his engine. He doesn't want to take a hit in the chest. If he was to take a 4-foot charge and just stand, he's leaving his chest exposed, which can hurt a lot. You want to protect yourself. You get low and wide. You keep your forearm out. And as you absorb the contact, you want to exhale. You want to exhale as a habit to help you in absorbing the contact, and then he's going to fall and actually roll and lift his feet in the air. So his feet go up in the air, and the benefit of his feet going up in the air is that if I'm going to fall on top of him, he's going to actually be protected. So as opposed to taking a 4-foot fall in which there's actually 2 points of contact, there can be the point of contact when I hit him and the point of contact when I land on him. With the 4-inch fall, he gets lower and wider as the offensive player gets closer and closer and closer. He gets out his fender, his bumper to protect him, and then as he falls, his feet come up in the air so that if I fall, I'm only going to fall on his feet and go off to one side or even over top of him. So let's take a look at what a couple of the key things are in order to get the call from a referee. Because that block charge call is often a difficult one, and there are a lot of frustrated coaches and frustrated players when a charge situation occurs. So here's what you can do to increase the likelihood of getting the call. The first and key fundamental principle is to fall in the direction of the penetration. Let me say that again. You need to fall in the direction of the penetration. If I'm penetrating down the lane in this direction, and as I'm penetrating, Kyle falls this direction, that's an obvious one to the referee that he wasn't there in time, and he's not going to get the call. But even if he's not there, you'll routinely hear referees say, well, your feet were moving. Well, I think that's typically because referees don't know how to express what they're actually seeing. Because you can have your feet moving. The key is you need to get your feet moving so that you can fall in the direction of the penetration. So as I penetrate down the lane, Kyle needs to get his body in front of me and make sure that his 2 cheeks are falling, and he wants to get his 2 cheeks down, and he needs to fall in the direction of the penetration. That's the clearest and easiest way to show the referee that you were there in time. It doesn't matter, once again, if your feet were moving. What matters is do you fall in the direction of the penetration. penetration. And you don't want to crumple to the ground. You don't want to fall hard and land flat. You want to get that 4-inch fall into a roll. So Kyle, let's just take 1 or 2 from the top. And this time, we're going to take, we'll take 1 or 2 right here, and then we'll take a look at 1 or 2 on-ball penetration. So he's a help side defender. I penetrate down the lane. He steps up. He gets lower and lower and lower, takes the charge, and bounces up again. Now, how can he practice it on his own? Coaches, you can obviously do this in your practices and just divide players into groups of 2 and have them work on their charge taking, and then Kyle would come at me and I would take my charge. But you can do it on your own. You can do it with carpeting. You can do it on your bed if you want to and get a really soft landing on your mattress. Or you can even do it in a gym. I used to work on it in grass in my backyard. I would just leave my little area where I would dribble and shoot, go onto the grass and practice my charges. But let's take a look at Kyle just working on his own. Let's have you get 2 quick reps. And he bounces up, stands back up again. So you need imagination in this. You need to picture that you're actually taking a charge against a penetrating player. Go ahead, Cal. You saw on the second one, he actually took 1 big step in order to fall in the direction of the penetration. Now let's take a look what it would look like as an on-ball defender. There are a lot of players who can take charges on players off the ball, but to be able to take an on-ball charge is much more difficult. Off-ball help side defense, players can get there, but you have to not only be quick, you've got to be clever to be able to be an on-ball defender and step in and take a charge. So Kyle's guarding me, and I begin to penetrate either direction. What he has to do is he has to anticipate and he has to get his feet over so that he can fall in the direction of the penetration. So if I attack to the right, he needs to get in front of me and fall that way. If I attack to the left, he needs to get over and fall that way. So let's take a look at each one of those. He has to take a big step over and fall in the direction of the penetration. And let's do it this time without me even moving. So you can do this just like you'd do it if you were on your own. So you're at the 3-point line guarding a shooter, and they attempt to penetrate, and you slide over and take the charge. That's your 4-inch fall charge. Now let's talk about stopping penetration. Just getting out there and actually attempting to stop a player in game situations, even in practice, isn't enough if you haven't mastered the techniques of stopping players. So let's work on some techniques that you can do to actually improve your ability to shut a penetrator down. The first is, Kyle, and we'll have you take this, we'll have you toss it to me like you're in a closeout position. And of course, being able to close out with short, choppy steps are critical to stopping a penetrator. But once you close out with a hand up, so you're taking away the shot, you're slowing yourself down by using those short, choppy steps in order to stop penetration, then you're going to force me one way or the other. If I was on the wing, you might force me to the baseline. If I was up top, you might force me into a help side defender. But you're going to force me one direction or the other. So let's have you go ahead and take that closeout right now. Short, choppy steps with a hand in the air. Now, he's got 1 high leg and 1 low leg. In order to be able to stop a penetrator, there's 3 specific techniques that he has to become proficient at. He's got to develop the muscle strength and muscle memory to do all 3 of these movements. But these are 3 movements that very few coaches teach. So coaches, if you want to help your players become defensive stoppers, you need to teach these to your players. And players, if you want to become a defensive stopper, you've got to be able to do these 3 movements. The first is being ready to anticipate a penetration to the right. You've got to be able to funnel a player towards the corner, away from the basket. So that means as soon as you close out, you've got to be able to take that first step and not give up the penetration to the lane, but you've got to be able to close it off. So you're going to close out, and then you've got to be able to slide. If you can stop a player and slide twice and stop them from getting into the lane, chances are they'll either pick up the ball or they'll use a pullback dribble and create space. So let's go ahead and take a look at this off the closeout. So he closes out and slide, and he beats me to that stop, to that place, and chests the ball. Now let's take a look at it if he was practicing it on his own, because you may be working out on your own doing this, and if you're working on your own, you've got to be able to imagine that there's an offensive player that you're closing out on. Coaches, if you're doing this in a practice, you could just do it as a 2-player drill, and you could use multiple baskets, or you could put players on either wings and get the same result. Here we go. by yourself, close out, and slide, slide. There you go. Go back to the starting spot again, get another rep. Close out and slide. So those are your closeouts with slides. The next is to be able to close out and then use a pivot and still be able to shut down a player. So let's take a look at this. He closes out, but now the penetrator attacks the high leg. He's got to be able to use an open pivot, but what most players have a habit of doing, specifically because they haven't developed the muscle memory, so they don't have anything to fall back on, is most players open too far. So the moment the penetration happens, they open up, and now they've given the entire lane. You don't want to open the door to an offensive player. So the muscle memory that you want to develop is turning and doing a partial pivot and then continuing to slide, slide, so that a defender can't turn the corner and get to the rim. So let's take a look at that by yourself. So you're going to close out, open pivot, slide, slide. Let's take it again. Close out. Open pivot, slide, slide. Let's take it one time now with me being the attacker. Slide, slide. Let's take it one more time. Slide, slide. And he beats me to that spot. And the third is if a penetrator attempts to attack, but then direction changes. Because what every good offensive player does and what every good playmaker does is when they get chested, when their penetration lane or angle gets closed off, instead of picking up the ball or just making a pass, they redirect. They direction change. And so what you'll see is a lot of players on the closeout, they may be good enough to stop a player on the first attack, but the moment they get chested, they direction change, and then the player opens the door, and they give up the re-attack. If you want to be a great defensive player, you've got to be able to not just chest a player once, you've got to be able to chest their redirection and re-attack as well. So what we're going to work on is now you're going to close out, Kyle. You're going to get your two slides, and then you're going to do an open pivot, but don't open the door. So it's an open pivot and slide back twice as well. So what you're practicing and what you're developing the strength in your legs to do is to actually chest, chest. So you're stopping penetration and you're stopping the re-attack. So let's take a look at two of those. That's the one. Let's take one more. Terrific. Now what you won't see is you won't see the average player getting to the gym and working on stopping penetration. But if you want to be a great defensive player, you're going to want to do some technique training and develop that muscle memory so that when it comes time for games and you need to shut down a quicker, faster player, you've got the muscle memory to be able to do it. Now we're going to go through 5 habits of good defenders. There are a lot more than just these 5 habits, but if you can develop these 5 and make them habits in your game, you'll be able to impress coaches at nearly any level of play. And you'll be able to help your team and lock down your defender more effectively. So let's go ahead and take a look at the first one. We're going to take a look at closeouts, followed by, well, let's just start with our closeouts first. I'll take the ball over to the wing. And if Kyle's in a help side defensive position, or maybe he had to come off a single screen or a double screen, so he's a little late in getting there, he's going to need to be able to get out to me and stop the shot from going up and stop the penetration. So the first thing he's going to need to do is get his hand up. He doesn't want to fly by. So he wants to keep his feet on the floor. That's a critical principle. So he keeps his feet on the floor with his hand up, and then he uses those short, choppy steps to help break his speed. He's putting on the brakes. That's the purpose of the short, choppy steps. You always know a good closeout because you can hear a good closeout. So he uses the short, choppy steps with his hand up. So let's go ahead and take that first closeout on the wing. So that's the closeout. We'll have you back up and take it again. Because once he closes out effectively, go ahead and close out. The moment a pass gets made from his player, he's going to have to implement the second good habit of every good defender, which is to jump to ball. Because what he doesn't want to give up is once that pass gets made, he doesn't want to give up a front cut where a player can just cut to the basket for an easy give and go. You see that if you watch 5th and 6th grade players all the time. They make a pass, run to the basket, get the ball back again. That's a sign of a not very effective, not very good defender. So what you see at at higher levels of play is the moment the pass gets made, a player jumps to the ball. It's just a really quick 2-foot hop over so that a player can't make a front cut. So I make the pass, he jumps to ball, and he keeps his hands out. So he's still in deny position. He's not going to allow me to cut to the basket. So let's take it one more time. I've got the ball, Kyle. He's just closed out. There's the pass, and I can't go there. So the only thing I can do is now go back door. And he's got his hands prepared, and he's ready to slide with me so that I can't beat him back door either. So you have to make it a habit to not only close out effectively, but as soon as the pass gets made, you have to be able to jump to ball. Once he's jumped to ball, and I've now popped out to the wing, it's critical that he sees the ball, wherever the ball may be. Most players have a habit of just following their man, and they think they're doing just fine as long as their player isn't scoring. But if you're going to be a true team defender, you've always got to be in a position to stop penetration. And in order to stop penetration, you've got to be able to see the ball. My former college coach used to talk about getting your head on a swivel, on a skewer. So your head is constantly turning. So Kyle is in a defensive position, and his head is constantly turning. He can see me if I'm still out on the wing, and I've popped out in the wing, and the ball is the far side. He's seeing the ball. And then he's ready to implement the next good habit of every good defensive player, which is to talk to the ball. He's going to talk to the ball by very simply letting the offensive player know that he's ready to stop penetration. Now, you've heard coaches talk about talking with your teammates, and that's something we won't get into now, but critical as well to communicate on defense. But one of the easiest things you can do is just talk to the ball. What do I mean by talk to the ball? Talk to the player who has the ball, who might be thinking about penetration. And you can do that by simply telling them that you've got help side to the middle, or you've got help side to the baseline. Sure, you're telling your teammates so they know which direction to force penetration, but more importantly, you're talking to the ball, because whoever that ball handler is, penetrators like to penetrate against disorganized defense. And the moment you talk to the ball and tell them, bring them my way, or you let him know, you've got help side middle, well, that penetrator is going to think twice about penetrating down your side of the lane. So you talk to the ball, and in order to talk to the ball, you have to be seeing the ball. You always want to be seeing the ball. In fact, PGC founder Dick DeVenzio said out of a 32-minute game, 31 minutes and 52 seconds, you should have your eyes on the basketball. You always need to see where your player is, but you get that head on the swivel. So you can see the ball, look away, see your player, and look back at the ball, and then talk to the ball. And the fifth and final one is you always want to be in a position to threaten penetration. You have to be in a position to threaten penetration. And to threaten penetration, you're going to get low, and you're very simply going to skirmish. Skirmish, you're going to make a commotion towards the ball when penetration takes place. You make a commotion with your hands and your feet. A sudden, rapid movement of your hands and feet darting towards the penetrator. What does that do? Well, you're making the penetrator uncertain. Are you going to step in and take the charge, or are you going to go back and pick up your check? Whether it's a 2-on-1 and you skirmish against the penetration, or whether it's in the half court and a player starts to penetrate and you skirmish, you're always one step away from taking the charge, and you're one step away from closing out on your check again. So you want to make it a habit of not just seeing the ball, not just talking to the ball, but then skirmishing against penetration. What we're going to have you do right now, Kyle, is we're going to have you go through a repeatable progression, and it's a simple one. You're going to close out on the ball. Once you close out on the ball, you're going to jump to the ball. And coaches, you could do this with partners in practice to work on their defensive positioning, just like a lot of coaches do in a 3-on-3 shell type drill. You can do it with just 2 players. Or you can do it by yourself, Kyle. So here's what it would look like by yourself. You'll close out on the ball, imagining that there's a player on the wing. You'll jump to the ball, imagining they've passed the ball up top. Then you're going to deny the ball all the way to the basket, and imagine that the ball gets swung all the way over to the far side, and you're going to get your head on a swivel, and you're going to be in help side position. Then you're going to talk to the ball, and you're going to say, I've got your help side, or bring a middle, and you'll actually call it out. I know if you were in an empty gym and somebody was to walk by, they'd probably think you were absolutely crazy. But most great defensive players are a little crazy. So you're going to want to develop this habit and add it to your game. And then finally, you're going to end with a skirmish, and then you do it all over again with a closeout, a jump to the ball, seeing the ball, help side, talk to the ball, skirmish. Let's take a look at it. I'll just stand here to be where that offensive player would be. Here we go.
Close up, close up, close up. Jump, 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 jump. Help side, bring my way, Skirmish, skirmish middle. Close up. Jump ball, jump ball, jump ball. Help side, bring my way. Skirmish, skirmish, skirmish. Help side.
And stop there. Just one additional reminder, did a great job closing out, great job jumping to ball, and then you slid down and you got in help side position and you saw the ball. Just remember to keep that head on the swivel. Head on the swivel so that you can see me and see the ball, and then you did a great job saying bring them my way. Let's see one final rep. One final rep.
Close up. Jump ball. Help side, see her, bring my way. Skirmish, skirmish.
Well done. If you add those 5 habits to your game, you'll be well on your way to becoming a defensive stopper.